Have you ever sat in silence and felt uneasy, not because something was wrong, but because no one else was there? In today's world, solitude is often mistaken for suffering. We're told that being alone is dangerous, unnatural, even a symptom of something broken inside us. But what if that belief is the real illusion? The US Surgeon General has called loneliness an epidemic. One study found people would rather receive electric shocks than sit quietly with their own thoughts. How did we become so afraid of our own company? Some avoid solitude like a plague. They can't bear a quiet lunch or an evening without distraction. Others, however, embrace it. They read alone, walk alone, even laugh alone. And in that stillness, they find not sadness, but strength. The truth is, solitude can either consume you or awaken you. It's not the absence of others that defines loneliness. It's the absence of connection to yourself. In this video, we'll explore why choosing to be alone might be the most powerful decision you ever make. Stay with me. What you're about to discover may change the way you see silence forever. 1. The choice of solitude. There's a profound difference between being alone and feeling lonely, a difference many fail to understand. Loneliness is a reaction. It is what arises when silence is resisted, when absence is viewed as lack. But solitude is a choice, a deliberate return to yourself. It is not the absence of others. It is the presence of clarity. The Stoics did not shun the world, but they never depended on it for their sense of worth. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still wrote in the quiet hours before dawn, reminding himself, "Nowhere can man find a more peaceful retreat than in his own soul." Solitude, when chosen with purpose, becomes not exile, but renewal. Yet we must ask honestly, what is solitude? Really? Is it a luxury, a burden, a tool, or a test? While solitude carries immense value, it also carries risk, especially when misunderstood. It's not about detaching from life, nor should it become a mask for weakness. When used to flee discomfort or avoid responsibility, it is not strength, it is retreat in disguise. So how long is too long to be alone? The Stoics wouldn't measure time in hours, but in effect, if your solitude leads to greater composure, discipline, and self-knowledge, it is time well spent. If it leads to disorder and indulgence, it is no longer solitude, but self-abandonment. Interestingly, a study of over 15,000 individuals revealed two striking insights. First, the more densely populated an environment, the lower the contentment of those who lived in it. And second, individuals with higher clarity and intellectual depth tend to thrive in solitude. Why? Because they've trained themselves to think independently, to filter the noise, to govern their emotions without needing constant feedback or distraction. This is not a matter of intelligence, it's a matter of inner architecture. Before we go deeper, here's a challenge. Stop, just for a moment. Ask yourself, do I know how to be alone without feeling unsettled? If not, why? What is it in silence that unsettles you? And what might you find in that silence if you stayed just a little longer? Solitude is not about avoiding others, it's about strengthening the self. And once you learn to walk with yourself without fear or neediness, you gain a kind of freedom no crowd can offer. Let's continue this journey into the discipline of being alone, because that's where the strongest mind begins to take form. 2. The importance of self-reflection. Stop for a moment. Don't scroll. Don't think about the next thing you have to do. Instead, look inward, in silence. Ask yourself this: what are the 5 traits within me that weaken my character? I'm not referring to superficial behaviors like smoking or overspending. I'm asking about the cracks in your moral foundation, the quiet tendencies that, if left unchecked, slowly erode your inner strength. Do you speak without purpose? Do you trust too quickly? Do you avoid discomfort? Do you seek approval from those who've never earned your respect? These are not quirks. These are warning signs. And until you confront them, they will continue to direct your life from the shadows. Now, I challenge you. Pause this video and write them down. Don't just think them. Name them. Define them. Put them in front of you like adversaries on a battlefield, because that's what they are. Each trait you tolerate but refuse to name gains power over you, but once seen, once identified, they lose their grip. And if you have the courage, share them in the comments, not to be exposed, but to be accountable. The Stoics taught that we must first know ourselves before we can master ourselves. And that begins not with praise, but with the confrontation of our own flaws. Have you done it? If you're like most people, you've probably stopped at 2 or 3. You might think that's all you carry, but that's not true. You have more. We all do, but you've never taken the time to look closely enough. You've never turned the light inward with enough intensity. Why? Because modern life has distracted you from forgetting yourself. You're drowning in tasks, conversations, scrolling, reacting, and somewhere in that noise, the quiet voice of your own conscience has gone unheard. You think you're too busy, but the Stoics would argue, you are too distracted. You say you don't have 5 minutes for yourself, but it's not time you lack. It's the courage to face what you might find when the noise fades. Seneca once wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. You protect your money. You guard your secrets. But you give away your attention, your hours, your inner clarity to people and problems that mean nothing to your soul. The truth is, self-reflection isn't a luxury, it's a duty. If you don't examine your life, your habits will guide you, and they rarely guide you toward freedom. Without self-reflection, you will continue to be ruled by invisible patterns, hidden insecurities, and old wounds masquerading as instincts. The Stoic doesn't just look at the world, he looks at himself first. Every day, every night, and not out of shame, but out of discipline, because no battle is won without understanding the terrain, and the most difficult terrain we'll ever navigate is the one within. So ask yourself again, who am I becoming by default? And who must I become by choice? Solitude is your chance to ask that question without interruption. Reflection is the sword you wield in that quiet place. Use it. Turn inward, not with judgment, but with honesty. Not to punish yourself, but to free yourself from the unseen chains of ignorance. To walk the Stoic path is to hold yourself to a higher standard, not one imposed by society, but one carved from within, and that journey begins the moment you stop running from your own gaze. Be still. Be honest. Be relentless in your pursuit of clarity. Because the person who refuses to examine himself will always be at the mercy of what he refuses to see. 3. Focus through solitude. Picture this. You're immersed in meaningful work, a project that requires depth, attention, and clarity. You've carved out the time, the energy, the environment. Your mind begins to settle, to sharpen. Then, without warning, someone nearby calls your name, shows you a trending post, or drops an irrelevant comment about something trivial. And just like that, your clarity is gone. What took you 20 minutes to build can be shattered in a second. Why? Because the modern world doesn't respect your focus, but Stoicism demands that you do. In a world that profits from your distraction, choosing solitude becomes an act of rebellion and a return to mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. But today, that retreat is under constant siege." Notifications, conversations, meaningless chatter, they all compete for your attention, not because they add value, but because they want to steal the one resource you can never recover, your time. Solitude, rightly understood, is not avoidance. It's alignment. It is the conscious act of stepping away from noise, not because you are weak, but because you are focused. When you are alone with your thoughts, undisturbed and undistracted, your mind reorganizes itself. Thoughts become sharper. Tasks are completed with more clarity. Solutions appear that once hid behind noise. This is not some modern hack. It is ancient wisdom. Seneca warned us, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. To allow constant interruption is to live fractured and shallow. When you are alone, truly alone, your energy stops scattering. There is no performance to maintain, no image to uphold. You begin to act with intention. This is where real productivity begins, not in ticking boxes or reacting quickly, but in moving deeply, whether you're writing, planning, building, or simply reflecting. Solitude is the forge that tempers your focus into something immovable, and it goes deeper. Solitude doesn't just help you concentrate, it sharpens your judgment. In silence, you are no longer swayed by the opinions of others, the trends of the day, or the subtle pressure to conform. You begin to see your priorities clearly. What matters becomes obvious, what doesn't become intolerable. From this place, decision-making is no longer clouded by doubt. It becomes a matter of will. But let's go even further. Solitude also refines memory, not the mechanical storage of facts, but the deeper kind, the kind that remembers your principles when it's hard to live by them. In the quiet, you remember your values, you remember what you're building, you remember who you are beneath the masks required by society. That is what true productivity looks like, not just producing more, but remembering what is truly worth your effort. So ask yourself, is your environment pulling you toward excellence or dragging you toward mediocrity? The Stoics would say, guard your mind as you would your home. Let no unworthy thought or distraction pass the gate without purpose. If someone disrupted your house while you worked, you'd confront them. But when your inner sanctuary is breached, you often let it slide. This must change. In solitude, you reclaim your space. You give yourself permission to go deeper, to work not just faster, but better, to create not just to finish, but to fulfill. If you want to outsmart the world, first learn to outsmart distraction. And nothing cuts through distraction like the sword of solitude. Embrace the stillness, not to hide, but to rise. Because in a world addicted to attention, the one who guards his focus becomes invincible. 4. Solve in stillness. Albert Einstein once remarked, solitude is painful when one is young, but delightful when one is more mature. And in that short reflection lies a profound Stoic truth. When we are immature in character, silence feels unbearable because it forces us to meet ourselves. But when our mind is trained and our spirit disciplined, solitude becomes a sacred space. It transforms from punishment into power. Especially when life presents us with problems that seem impossible to untangle, the greatest solutions often emerge not from others, but from within, not from endless searching, but from stillness. When faced with hardship or complexity, most people panic. They turn outward, asking, searching, Googling, grasping for quick answers. But the Stoic doesn't flinch. He turns inward. He retreats, not to run away, but to gain perspective. In solitude, the mind stops reacting and starts observing. One layer at a time, the problem unfolds like a map. The noise of emotion fades. The illusion of urgency dissolves. And what once seemed overwhelming reveals its structure. Epictetus said, circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. And the man who never stops to reflect in solitude will never be revealed anything at all. This is the power of stillness. The ancient Stoics knew it. The great artists and thinkers lived by it. Da Vinci, Einstein, Seneca. When their minds encountered resistance, they didn't distract themselves with entertainment or conversation. They sat, they walked, they allowed the silence to speak before they did, because the best solutions come not when the mind is forced, but when it is free to roam with discipline. Your mind, like a sword, needs both tension and space to sharpen. There are times for deliberate concentration when you study, when you build, when you act. But the other kind of power, the one that leads to insight and clarity, emerges when you are seemingly doing nothing, when you are walking alone, sitting alone, waiting alone. That's when ideas appear not as flashes of genius, but as reflections of order, emerging from the quiet. Solitude does not merely help you think, it reveals what you were too distracted to notice. It is in these quiet stretches that the unconscious part of your mind connects dots you didn't even know were there. You remember a lesson from years ago, a moment from last week, a principle from Marcus Aurelius, and suddenly the problem that haunted you seems solvable, not through effort, but through understanding. So yes, solitude sharpens problem solving, but not because it turns you into someone else. It's because it allows you to return to who you really are. A man or woman with reason, with clarity, with access to a quiet, indestructible core that most people have buried under years of noise and interruption. In silence, that part of you speaks. And when you hear it, you don't need advice, you need action. Yet here's the paradox. Solitude has all these benefits, but few people truly pursue it. Why? Because solitude demands confrontation with your distractions, with your weaknesses, with the problems you've delayed facing. But this confrontation is necessary. It is the gateway to wisdom. Seneca reminds us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And what greater waste is there than avoiding the silence where your deepest solutions are waiting? So the next time you feel stuck, don't rush to ask someone else. Don't flood your mind with content. Don't seek more voices. Find a quiet room, close the door, and return to yourself. The Stoics would say, the answer is already within you. Your only task is to remove what blocks it. And solitude, when embraced with courage and discipline, clears the way. 5. When solitude becomes escape. Solitude, when rightly embraced, is a powerful force. It is the stillness that reveals your priorities, the silence that sharpens your discipline, and the space in which true self-respect is cultivated. But even something as noble as solitude can be misused. When solitude ceases to be a conscious choice and becomes a way to avoid, numb, or hide, it is no longer a path to strength. It becomes silent self-deception. The Stoics were not advocates for isolation. They believed in engagement with the world, just not dependence on it. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by the demands of empire, still carved out moments of stillness not to escape life, but to return to it with greater clarity. He did not retreat from duty. He withdrew from noise so he could face duty with a clear and grounded mind. That's the key distinction. Solitude is powerful, but only when it's chosen for the right reasons. Ask yourself this: are you withdrawing from the world because you've mastered your emotions, or because you're running from them? Do you choose solitude to strengthen your character, or to avoid the discomfort of confrontation, connection, or responsibility? The answer matters, because when solitude is driven by fear rather than reason, it begins to rot from within. What looks like calmness on the surface becomes a breeding ground for overthinking, indecision, and quiet decay. This is especially dangerous when solitude is suddenly adopted without preparation. If you are not trained to be still, if you have not disciplined your thoughts or learned to govern your inner world, being alone can feel unbearable. You may start feeling restless after just a few minutes. Your mind wanders, creating stories, doubts, regrets. You begin replaying old wounds or imagining future fears. And instead of finding clarity and stillness, you drown in your own noise. The The Stoic would not call this strength. He would call it a lack of readiness, because solitude is not just an environment, it is a skill. Like any skill, it must be developed gradually. The ability to be alone, to be inwardly composed, is not granted overnight. It is trained in daily moments of stillness. It is tested in your ability to say no to distractions, to pause before reacting, to reflect before speaking. To truly benefit from solitude, you must approach it as a discipline, not a mood. Begin slowly, build your capacity for silence, and always ask, am I using this moment to become stronger, or am I hiding from a truth I must face? The Stoics remind us that strength lies not in avoiding discomfort, but in moving through it with reason and resolve. Solitude is not about closing the door forever. It's about stepping back long enough to choose which doors are truly worth opening. 6. Training for solitude. If you wish to reclaim your inner command, begin with just 10 to 15 minutes a day, not with distractions, not half present, but in true solitude. This means no companions, no conversations, and most importantly, no devices. Leave your phone behind. The Stoics taught that self-mastery begins not in comfort, but in deliberate separation from noise. And today, the greatest source of mental chaos often fits in your pocket. At first, the stillness may feel unnatural. You may feel the urge to fill the silence, to reach for something, anything, to distract you. That's not weakness, it's habit. You've been conditioned to avoid being alone with your own thoughts. But this discomfort is not your enemy, it is your starting point. Epictetus would remind us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And mastering yourself begins with resisting the need for constant stimulation. To ease into the practice, choose a quiet activity that fosters inward reflection. Take a walk, not to reach a destination, but to observe your own presence. Let your steps anchor you, or sit with a notebook and begin to write, not to perform, but to see. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What quietly irritates me? What is truly working in my life? Put your thoughts in front of you. Clarity begins the moment confusion is given form. You may also sit in silence and observe your breath, not for ritual, but for discipline. The Stoics did not meditate to escape the world. They paused to train their mind for it. The goal is not relaxation, but readiness. In those moments of silence, you begin to become familiar with yourself again. You stop reacting. You start observing. You begin to act from principle, not impulse. Start small, 10 minutes, then build. This is how a Stoic develops strength, not in grand declarations, but in quiet, daily training. When you learn to be with yourself, unshaken by the pull of noise, you develop the most powerful kind of freedom, the ability to choose your own thoughts. That is the foundation of all clarity and all greatness. 7. The power of silence. A study from the British Journal of Psychology involving over 15,000 people revealed two profound truths that align perfectly with Stoic wisdom. First, the more a person is surrounded by noise, crowds, and constant interaction, as often found in densely populated environments, the less peace they experience. Second, those with clarity of thought, with deeper understanding and inner strength, often prefer solitude. They know how to be alone not just without suffering, but with purpose. In this state, they don't run from the world. They organize their thoughts, focus their energy, and move with intention. But here's the deeper truth. Solitude without silence is merely isolation. It is not enough to be alone physically. To gain the full benefit of solitude, you must also quiet the noise within, and that requires mastering the art of silence. Not just the absence of words, but the restraint of reaction, the stillness of the mind, and the discipline to resist the temptation to distract yourself. Silence, to the Stoic, is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the state where clarity begins to rise like morning fog, giving way to sunlight. Without silence, solitude becomes restlessness. Your mind searches for noise like a hand reaching for a sword in fear. But once you discipline yourself to sit in the quiet, without your phone, without seeking stimulation, something powerful happens. You begin to see clearly. You begin to think without interruption. You begin to act from a place of principle, not pressure. Even in the modern world, this is not lost. Powerful leaders, innovators, and thinkers, those who shape the course of society, know the value of silent reflection. It's said that Jeff Bezos made some of his most important strategic decisions in silence, away from meetings, in uninterrupted thought. The Stoics would say, withdraw into yourself. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and what you think in silence becomes who you are in action. So if you wish to outsmart the noise of the world, begin by mastering silence, not to escape, but to return stronger, calmer, and unshakably clear. When you learn to walk alone, not out of resentment, but out of clarity, something within you quietly transforms. You begin to see life without the noise, without the masks, without the constant pull of expectations. You no longer chase validation, attention, or approval. Instead, you cultivate something infinitely more valuable: inner command, the kind of strength that does not shout, but moves with quiet certainty. The kind of presence that does not beg to be seen, yet is impossible to ignore. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the space where the soul regathers its power. It is the forge where focus is sharpened, where wounds begin to heal, and where wisdom is allowed to speak. The Stoics taught us that the most dangerous distractions are not external, but internal. And the one who masters being alone masters the world, not by dominating it, but by no longer being ruled by it. If something in today's journey stirred something within you, consider subscribing. Not out of habit, but as a quiet decision to keep walking this path of strength, reason, and stillness. And now, if you feel ready, share with me just 3 words in the comments that reflect your commitment to this path. Simply write, I choose stillness. Remember your silence is not your weakness. It is your shield. It is your compass. And the more you learn to walk alone with discipline and depth, the more you'll realize you were never truly alone. You were always being prepared. In the next video, we'll go even deeper into this quiet power and how to use it to shape your life from within. Your journey is just beginning.